Imagine you're walking into a bar. It's Friday night. The air smells like cheap gin and expensive perfume, and you're scanning the room. You aren't looking for a wife, at least not consciously. You're looking for a connection. And then you see her. She's standing by the jukebox. Dark hair, eyes that seem to hold 1,000 unsaid secrets, and the ink. A snake coiling up her forearm. Maybe a quote in a typewriter font across her collarbone that says something vaguely nihilistic like memento mori or just breathe. Your brain, your primitive lizard brain, lights up like a Christmas tree. Why? Because visually she is distinct, she is high contrast, but biologically, you're reacting to a warning sign that evolution hasn't quite taught you how to read yet. We live in an era where ink is everywhere. In 2012, about 21% of Americans had tattoos. By 2023, that number for women under 35 skyrocketed to nearly 47%. It's mainstream. It's normal. But here is the uncomfortable truth that polite society, and certainly the mainstream dating advice gurus, won't tell you. Ink is rarely just art. It is a roadmap. It is a permanent biological signal of internal personality traits, psychological predispositions, and quite often a history of volatility. We're not talking about a tiny butterfly on an ankle from a spring break in Cancun. We're talking about the psychology of body modification. We're going to look at what clinical studies, not just red pill theories, but actual peer-reviewed data from the Journal of Sexual Medicine and the European Journal of Psychology, say about the correlation between tattoos, risk-taking behaviour, impulsivity, and emotional stability. You might think you're just dating a cool girl with an edge, but by the end of this video, you'll realise you might be strapping yourself into a roller coaster that has no brakes, a broken safety bar, and a track record of derailment. I'm going to break down the 5 major risks you take when you commit to the alt-girl aesthetic. We're going to peel back the layers of ink to see what's actually written underneath. Buckle up, gentlemen, it's going to be a bumpy ride. 1. The sensation seeker and the dopamine loop. Let's start with the most chemically potent risk, high sensation seeking. To understand who you are dating, you have to understand the act of getting tattooed itself. Stripped of the self-expression PR spin, getting tattooed is a voluntary act of inflicting pain upon oneself to permanently alter reality. It requires overriding the body's natural preservation instinct. In psychology, there is a personality construct known as sensation seeking, originally developed by the psychologist Marvin Zuckerman. It measures a person's need for varied, novel, and complex sensations and experiences, and the willingness to take physical and social risks for the sake of such experiences. Here is the cold, hard data. Study after study has shown a direct, undeniable correlation between heavy tattooing and high scores on the sensation-seeking scale. A 2012 study published in the Review of Psychology found that individuals with tattoos scored significantly higher on the subscales of experience-seeking and disinhibition. So what does this look like on a Tuesday night in your relationship? You're dating a woman who has a baseline requirement for stimulation that is higher than the average person. The ink on her skin is the physical manifestation of a brain that screams, "I need to feel something, and I need to feel it now." The scenario. You've been dating for 3 months. The honeymoon phase is starting to fade. For a normal, stable partner, this is when the relationship deepens. You settle into a comfortable routine. Netflix, cooking dinner, planning a summer vacation. It's peaceful, but for the high sensation seeker, peace feels like death. She starts picking fights over nothing. Maybe she accuses you of not caring enough because you didn't text back in 5 minutes. Maybe she suddenly wants to quit her job and move to a different city because she's bored. Maybe she suggests opening the relationship or bringing in a third party because vanilla monogamy doesn't give her that dopamine spike anymore. You find yourself walking on eggshells, trying to curate an exciting life to keep her entertained. You become the circus ringmaster, constantly trying to juggle flaming torches so she doesn't get bored and leave, or worse, cheat. And let's talk about that disinhibition factor I mentioned earlier. Disinhibition is exactly what it sounds like, a lack of restraint. It's the inability to say no to an impulse. A study conducted by researchers at McMaster University found that people with tattoos were significantly more likely to engage in impulsive behaviours. This isn't just about ink, it's about financial habits, substance use, and sexual choices. Think about it logically. If a woman is willing to make a permanent, difficult-to-reverse decision about her appearance based on a fleeting aesthetic desire or an emotional whim, how do you think she handles financial planning? I saw these boots, and I just had to have them. I know we're saving for a house, but I booked a trip to Bali. The needle dopamine is real. The pain of the tattoo releases endorphins. It's a rush. Once that rush fades, the ink is just there. So she needs a new rush. In a relationship, you become the source of that rush. When you are the new guy, you are the tattoo. You are the novel stimulus. But once she has you, once you are permanent, the dopamine wears off. And just like she might look at an old tattoo and think, I need to cover that up or get something new next to it, she looks at the relationship and thinks, this isn't hitting the spot anymore. Evolutionary psychologists have looked at this too. High sensation seeking and impulsivity are strongly linked to what is called a short-term mating strategy. This is the biological preference for multiple partners, short flings, and high-intensity but low-duration connections. If you are a man looking for a legacy, a wife, a mother to your children, a partner who will build a 40-year empire with you, you are looking for low-time preference. You want someone who can delay gratification for a greater reward later. The woman covered in impulsive ink has signalled, quite literally on her skin, that she has high-time preference. She discounts the future in favour of the present. Look at the celebrity dating sphere. Look at the men who date the heavily tattooed alternative icons, the Megan Foxes, the Kat Von Ds of the world. Are those relationships known for their stability? Or are they known for drinking each other's blood, whirlwind marriages, and explosive public divorces 6 months later? It's exciting. It's intoxicating. The sex is probably phenomenal because she approaches the bedroom with the same disinhibition she approaches the tattoo parlour. But don't confuse intensity with intimacy. You, as a man, often mistake this volatility for passion. You think, wow, she feels things so deeply. She's so alive. No, brother, she's unregulated, and eventually that lack of regulation will turn toward you. When the boredom sets in, she won't just sit down and talk about it. She will act out. She will seek a new sensation, and that usually involves chaos. Before we move to the darker psychological aspect of point number 2, do me a favour. If you've ever dated a girl where the relationship felt like a literal addiction, high highs and rock bottom lows, hit that like button. And if you're brave enough, tell me in the comments, how many tattoos did she have? I want to see if the correlation holds up in the comment section. 2. The map of trauma, neuroticism and emotional instability. Now we need to get serious. We need to talk about neuroticism. In the Big 5 personality traits model, neuroticism isn't just about being nervous. It refers to a person's tendency to experience negative emotions, anxiety, depression, self-doubt, and emotional volatility. While the sensation seeker gets tattoos for the thrill, the neurotic type gets tattoos for the coping mechanism. A study published in Personality and Individual Differences found a positive correlation between the number of tattoos a woman has and her levels of neuroticism. But why? For many women, tattoos are an attempt to reclaim ownership of a body that feels like it has been violated or traumatized. This is what psychologists call body armoring. When you see a woman with significant ink, especially large pieces that cover vulnerable areas like the chest, the stomach, or the neck, you have to ask yourself, what is she covering up? And I don't mean physically covering a scar, I mean psychologically. Psychologists suggest that the physical pain of tattooing serves as a distraction from emotional pain. It allows the person to control the pain. I can't control that my father left, or I can't control the abuse I suffered, but I can control this needle entering my skin. I decide when it starts, and I decide when it stops. When you date a woman who uses body modification as a primary coping mechanism, you're essentially dating her trauma. The ink is the scar tissue of her past battles. This is where many of you nice guys and Captain Save-A-Hose get trapped. You see the ink, you hear the sad stories about her exes, her childhood, her struggles, and your protective instinct kicks in. You think, I can fix her. I can be the stable rock she's never had. Listen to me closely. You cannot love the trauma out of someone. If she has not processed her trauma through therapy and internal work, and has instead processed it by sitting in a tattoo chair for 40 hours, she has not healed. She has merely decorated the wound. We have to touch on the third rail of relationship psychology, borderline personality disorder, BPD. Now, not every woman with tattoos has BPD. That would be a ridiculous generalization. However, self-harm and impulsive body modification are hallmark diagnostic criteria for BPD. A study in the Journal of Personality Disorders noted that patients with BPD often use body modification to solidify an unstable sense of self. They don't know who they are, so they try to draw who they are on their skin. Dating someone with unresolved neuroticism or BPD traits is like trying to hold water in your hands while running a marathon. 1 minute, you are the greatest man who ever lived, idealization. The next minute, because you forgot to buy almond milk, you're an abusive narcissist who is just like her father, devaluation. Often, the tattoos serve as a keep out sign. It's a defense mechanism designed to push people away before they can get too close. It tests you. Can you handle this? Can you handle me looking like this? If you pass the test, you get access, but the testing never stops. A woman with high neuroticism is constantly scanning for threats. She's hyper-vigilant. Why did you look at that waitress? Why is your phone face down? You're going to leave me eventually, everyone does. This creates a relationship dynamic based on reassurance seeking. You become less of a boyfriend and more of an emotional support animal. You spend 80% of your energy reassuring her that you aren't leaving, which ironically drains you to the point where you want to leave. A 2019 study from the University of Miami brought some shocking numbers to light. They surveyed over 2,000 people and found that tattooed individuals were more likely to report diagnosed mental health issues and sleep problems. Specifically, the study showed that as the number of tattoos increased, the likelihood of reported mental health struggles also increased. It is a linear progression. One butterfly on the shoulder, probably fine. A full sleeve of skulls and weeping angels. You are statistically entering a danger zone of higher mental health comorbidity. The identity crisis. This links back to the lack of a stable self. Women who are secure, happy, and content with their internal value rarely feel the burning need to drastically alter their external appearance repeatedly. When you date the ink addict, you're often dating someone who is fundamentally uncomfortable in their own skin, so they are trying to cover it up. You have to ask yourself, do you want a partner who is at peace, or do you want a partner who is at war with herself? Because if she is at war with herself, you will inevitably become collateral damage. 3. The main character. Syndrome. Narcissism and histrionics. We've talked about dopamine, and we've talked about trauma. Now we need to talk about the fuel that powers the modern dating marketplace. Attention. If you are dating a woman who has covered herself in ink, you are dealing with someone who has voluntarily turned her body into a billboard. And what does a billboard do? It demands to be looked at. This brings us to risk number 3, the main character syndrome, or in clinical terms, traits associated with narcissism and histrionic personality disorder. Let's be honest with each other. If you get a tattoo on your face, your neck, or your hands, places that cannot be easily hidden, you're making a statement. You're saying, My need to express myself is more important than fitting into professional norms, social etiquette, or your conservative grandmother's comfort zone. A study conducted by researchers at the University of Vienna explored the link between body modification and personality. They found that individuals with tattoos scored significantly higher in need for uniqueness. Now, wanting to be unique isn't inherently bad. But when that need becomes the primary driver of your life, it becomes toxic in a relationship. Why? Because a healthy relationship is a partnership. It's a team. It's a we. But for the person with high narcissistic traits, there is no we. There is only me and the supporting cast. The scenario: you take her to a corporate dinner or a wedding, a classy event. A woman with main character syndrome is physically incapable of blending in. She doesn't want to be part of the group. She wants to disrupt the group. She wears a dress that specifically highlights her ink. She talks louder. She steers every conversation back to her art, her experiences, her pain, her story. You aren't there with a partner. You're there as the handler of a celebrity that nobody asked for. Histrionic personality disorder is characterized by a pattern of excessive attention-seeking emotions and an overwhelming need to be the center of attention. Does this sound familiar? If I don't get a new tattoo, I feel invisible. I post these photos not for men, but for me. We all know that's a lie. When you date a woman heavily invested in body modification, you are competing with the validation she gets from the world. Every time she walks down the street, people look. Every time she posts a photo, the simps in her DMs flood her with validation about how badass and beautiful her ink is. The relationship consequence. You cannot compete with the internet. You cannot compete with the constant dopamine drip of public attention. If her self-worth is tied to her external edge, she requires constant maintenance. You stop complimenting her for one day, she feels neglected. You don't notice the tiny touch-up she got on her sleeve. You don't see her. Let's look at the data again. Research, published in Archives of Sexual Behavior, has found correlations between tattooing, piercing, and exhibitionism. This isn't just about nudity. It's about the psychological need to be observed. In a relationship, this manifests as drama. If things are too quiet, she feels invisible. So she creates a scene. She starts an argument in public. She flirts with the bartender right in front of you. Why? Because negative attention is still attention. You want a peaceful life. You want to build a business, raise a family, and have a sanctuary to come home to. She wants a stage. And trust me, gentlemen, you do not want to be the prop in her one-woman show. 4. The rebellion reflex, authority issues and conflict resolution. Let's move to the most practical day-to-day nightmare you will face, conflict resolution. Tattoos have historically been a mark of the outlaw, the sailor, the convict, the rebel. While they are mainstream now, the psychological root of the desire to get tattooed often stems from a rejection of authority and traditional norms. This is risk number 4, the rebellion reflex. If you are a man who operates in the real world, a man of logic, structure and leadership, you likely value hierarchy and order. You understand that in a relationship, sometimes one person has to lead, and sometimes logic must override emotion. But you're dating a woman whose very skin says, "Fait the rules." The anti-conformity trap, a 2015 study in the Social Science Journal, examined the link between tattoos and deviant behaviour. They found that tattooed individuals were less likely to conform to social pressures and authority figures. That sounds cool, you might think. I want a free thinker? Sure. You want a free thinker until you're trying to explain why buying a $50,000 car with a 20% interest rate is a bad idea. To the rebellion reflex, your logic sounds like control, and her default setting is to resist control at all costs. The scenario: you're in a disagreement, not a fight, just a disagreement. You present a logical argument. "Babe, we shouldn't go out tonight because we have that early flight tomorrow and we need to save money." A cooperative partner says, You're right, let's stay in. The rebel says, don't tell me what to do, you're trying to control me just like your parents here. She perceives leadership as oppression. There is a psychological trait known as oppositional defiant disorder, ODD, usually diagnosed in children. But let's be real, many adults never grew out of it. It's a pattern of angry, irritable mood, argumentative behaviour and vindictiveness toward authority figures. When a woman has covered herself in counterculture symbols, she is bought into an identity that defines itself by what it is against, not what it is for. She's against the norm. She's against boring suburbia. She's against being told what to do. How do you build a legacy with someone who hates structure? Marriage is a legal contract. It's a structure. Parenting is the ultimate exercise in authority and consistency. Imagine raising children with a woman who fundamentally distrusts authority. You try to discipline the kids. She undermines you because she projects her own childhood rebellion onto them. You try to set boundaries. She breaks them just to prove she can. Here is the uncomfortable specific detail. Women with high rebellion reflex scores are overwhelmingly attracted to bad boys, men who also reject society. If you're a stable, high-value man with a career, a 401k and a clean record, you are, biologically speaking, boring to her. She might date you for your resources. She might date you because she's hitting 30 and realizes the drug dealer she dated in her 20s isn't husband material. But deep down, she craves the chaos. She craves the man who ignores the rules. This means you're constantly fighting a ghost. You're fighting the ghost of the dangerous man who made her feel that adrenaline spike. You're offering safety. She is addicted to danger. You cannot negotiate with someone who views your stability as a cage. This is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of guys who think they can tame the wild girl. I want to know, have you ever dated a girl who turned every logical discussion into a fight about control? Did she have ink? Let me know in the comments below, I read them all. 5. The sociosexual signal, pair bonding of past partners. We've covered the mind, the emotions, and the authority issues. Now, we have to talk about the biology of attraction and the grim mathematics of the mating market. This is risk number 5. Unrestricted sociosexuality. In evolutionary psychology, we measure a person's willingness to engage in uncommitted sexual relations using the Sociosexual Orientation Inventory, SOI. Restricted sociosexuality. You need emotional connection, commitment, and time before sex. Think, wife material. Unrestricted sociosexuality. You're comfortable with casual sex, one-night stands, and relationships that lack deep emotional investment. Here is the data point that should make your blood run cold. A study published in Archives of Sexual Behavior, 2017, surveyed heavily tattooed individuals and found a direct, statistically significant correlation between the amount of body art and unrestricted sociosexuality. The study found that tattooed women, on average, reported a younger age of first sexual intercourse, a higher number of lifetime sexual partners, a greater willingness to engage in sex without love. In nature, bright colours and distinct markings often serve as a signal to predators or potential mates. Aposematism is the term for warning coloration. In the modern dating market, extensive tattoos are often a signal of sexual availability but relationship unavailability. When a woman turns her body into a public canvas, she is signalling that she is open for business to the visual marketplace. She's attracting the male gaze aggressively. You've heard the analogy of the tape, right? If you stick a piece of scotch tape to a wall and peel it off, it sticks well. If you stick it to a second wall, it sticks okay. By the 10th wall, that tape doesn't stick to anything. It picks up dust, lint, and dirt, and it loses its adhesive properties. This is pair bonding. If you're looking for a long-term partner, you want someone whose ability to bond is intact. But if the data shows that heavily tattooed women have higher partner counts, higher body counts, you're statistically dealing with someone who has bonded and broken over and over again. Let's paint a scenario. You start dating her. The sex is incredible, because as we discussed in point number 1, she is a sensation seeker. She is uninhibited. She has skills she learned from a roster of men who didn't stick around. You think, I'm the lucky one. I'm the one who gets to keep her. But then, 6 months in, the novelty fades. The new relationship energy, NRE, wears off. Because she has an unrestricted sociosexual orientation, her brain isn't wired to transition easily into the boring, stable, oxytocin-fueled phase of long-term love. Her brain is wired for the dopamine hit of the next conquest. I'm not saying every woman with a tattoo cheats. That's absurd. But I am saying that impulsivity plus sensation-seeking, a history of casual sex, a high-risk profile for infidelity. A study from Texas Tech University found a correlation between tattoos and risk-taking behaviours, including substance abuse and sexual promiscuity. When things get tough in your relationship, and they always do, a woman with high impulse control sticks it out. A woman with low impulse control, the kind who gets a matching tattoo with a guy she's known for 2 weeks, looks for the exit door. Gentlemen, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be the husband, or do you just want to be turned just 27? Because when you marry a woman with a history of high volatility and high partner counts, you aren't just marrying her, you're marrying the ghosts of every man who came before you, and those ghosts tend to haunt the marriage. 6. Financial dysmorphia, the high cost of aesthetics. Let's step away from the bedroom and look at the bank account, because if you plan on building a life with someone, financial compatibility is just as important as sexual compatibility. Risk number 6 is financial impulsivity, or what I like to call financial dysmorphia. Good tattoos are expensive. A full sleeve from a reputable artist can cost anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 or more. Even cheap tattoos add up. Now, if you are dating a woman who is a high-earning executive, maybe this doesn't matter. But let's be real about the demographic overlap here, the high time preference economy. We mentioned time preference earlier. This is the economic concept of how much you value the present versus the future. Low time preference, saving $500 today to have $5,000 in 10 years. Wealth mindset. High time preference, spending $500 today because YOLO. Poverty mindset. Tattoos are the ultimate high time preference purchase. They're a depreciating asset. Actually, they're worse than a depreciating asset. They're a liability. They limit job prospects in certain conservative, high-paying fields, law, high finance, executive management, and they cost money to maintain or remove. The scenario: you're dating a girl who works a mid-level job. She complains about her student loans. She complains that rent is too high. She drives a car with a check engine light that has been on since the Obama administration. And yet, she comes home with a fresh $400 piece on her forearm. You ask, I thought you were broke. She says, I needed this for my mental health. It's self-care. This is a massive red flag for financial illiteracy. When a woman prioritizes permanent body decoration over emergency savings, debt repayment, asset accumulation, she's telling you that she operates on emotional reasoning, not logical reasoning. In a marriage, this is catastrophic. You want to save for a down payment on a house. She wants to go to a tattoo convention in Vegas. You want to invest in a family trust. She wants to invest in herself, which usually means aesthetics, filler, lashes, and ink. Tattoos are often part of a larger consumerist identity. It's rarely just the ink, it's the piercing, it's the dyed hair, it's the specific alt fashion. This is a lifestyle that requires constant consumption to maintain the image. If you marry this woman, you become the financier of that image. You become the wallet that funds her rebellion. And here is the irony. The more you fund it, the more she resents you for being the boring provider who makes her lifestyle possible. Let's not forget the back-end costs. Laser removal is expensive, painful, and takes years. Cover-up tattoos are even bigger and darker than the originals. If she regrets her choices later in life, and many do, who pays for the fix? Spoiler alert, you do. You're essentially signing up to subsidize her bad decisions for the rest of your life. I know some of you are screaming at your screens right now saying, "My girlfriend has tattoos and she's great with money." Exceptions exist, but we are talking about patterns. If you've ever paid for a girl's tattoo bills while she owed you rent money, drop an emoji in the comments. Let's see the damage. 7. The permanent victim narrative, externalizing responsibility. This brings us to a risk that is subtle, but arguably the most poisonous to a long-term relationship. Risk number 7. The externalization of identity. Healthy people have an internal locus of control. They believe they are responsible for their own happiness, their own success, and their own healing. Unhealthy people have an external locus of control. They believe things happen to them, and they need to display their struggles for the world to validate them. The walking diary phenomenon. Why do people write on themselves? Historically, branding was done to slaves or criminals. It was a mark of ownership by another. When a woman covers herself in quotes, song lyrics, or dates of tragic events, she is permanently etching her history of victimhood onto her skin. She's making sure that she never, ever forgets her pain. And more importantly, she's making sure you never forget it either. If she has a tattoo that says "trust no one," do you think she's going to trust you? If she has a tattoo of a broken heart, do you think she's ready to have a whole one? These aren't just drawings, they are affirmations. And if you repeat an affirmation every time you look in the mirror, it becomes your reality. You get into an argument, you make a mistake. A woman with a healthy mindset says, "Okay, that hurt, but let's fix it." A woman who has built her identity around being damaged or a survivor will retreat into that identity. She will say, "See, you're just like the rest. This is why I have this wall up." She uses her ink as a shield to deflect accountability. She is the protagonist of a tragedy, and you are just the latest villain. Tattoos are conversation starters. Oh, what does that mean? Well, back in 2018, I went through this really dark time. She is addicted to telling her trauma story. It is her primary currency for social connection. If you take away the trauma, who is she? If you fix the problems, what does she talk about? She needs the problems. She needs the drama. Because without it, the artwork doesn't make sense anymore. You cannot build a positive future with someone who is obsessed with memorializing a negative past. 8. The biological burden, toxicology, and the healthy vessel. We have spent a lot of time talking about the software, the psychology, the emotions, the personality. But we need to talk about the hardware. We need to talk about the physical vessel that you might be planning to build a family with. Risk number 8 is the biological burden. If you are a man who takes care of himself, you go to the gym, you eat clean, you avoid microplastics, you worry about testosterone levels, why would you partner with someone who has voluntarily injected heavy metals into their dermis? Most people think tattoos just sit in the skin. They don't. A study published in Scientific Reports revealed that micro and nanoparticles from tattoo ink travel inside the body and eventually accumulate in the lymph nodes. Your lymph nodes are the checkpoints of your immune system. They are what fight off infection and cancer. When you get a massive sleeve or a back piece, your immune system views that ink as a foreign invader. Macrophages, white blood cells, attack the ink to try to eat it and remove it. But the ink particles are too big, so the cells die, and the ink gets stuck, or it drifts. Researchers found that the lymph nodes of heavily tattooed individuals are often permanently stained the colour of their ink. They are literally clogged with toxic debris. What is in that ink? The FDA does not strictly regulate tattoo ink ingredients. Studies have found mercury in red inks, lead, arsenic, carcinogenic hydrocarbons. Biologically, men are wired to seek cues of health and fertility in a mate. Clear skin, bright eyes, healthy hair. These are universal signals of a healthy immune system. Tattoos obscure these signals. They cover the skin, making it harder to spot dermatological issues, rashes, or changes in health. But more importantly, extensive tattooing as a signal of poor risk assessment regarding health. If she is willing to inject mystery chemicals into her body for the sake of aesthetics, what else is she putting in her body? Is she vaping? Is she on a cocktail of SSRIs? Is she eating processed garbage? If you want children, you want the healthiest possible environment for gestation. While there is no definitive study saying tattoos cause birth defects, we do know that during pregnancy the immune system is suppressed. Do you want a partner whose immune system is already under a chronic low-level load because it is constantly fighting the foreign material in her skin? Psychologically, we have to revisit the concept of self-preservation. A woman who cherishes her body, who views it as a temple, generally does not graffiti the walls of that temple. A woman who views her body as a project or a canvas often dissociates from the physical reality of her health. When you date the heavily tattooed woman, you're often dating someone who prioritizes image over function. And as you age, function becomes everything. You want a partner who will be hiking with you at 60, not one who is dealing with autoimmune issues potentially triggered by decades of systemic inflammation. It sounds clinical, it sounds cold, but nature is cold. Biology doesn't care about her self-expression. Biology cares about toxicity levels and immune response. You need to care about them too. 9. The legacy problem, social capital, and the grandma test. This brings us to the final and perhaps most uncomfortable risk, the risk to your social capital and your legacy. Risk number 9. The social stigma and the maternal archetype. We live in a world that pretends to be non-judgmental. We pretend that books shouldn't be judged by their covers. But in the real world, the world of high-status business, elite social circles and traditional family structures, judgment is alive and well. If you're a high-value man, you likely attend events where image matters. When you walk into a room with your partner, she's a reflection of your judgment. If she has tasteful, concealable art, nobody cares. But if she has neck tattoos, hand tattoos, or aggressive, chaotic ink visible in a cocktail dress, you lose points. People instinctively question your decision-making. Why did he choose her? Is he going through a midlife crisis? Is she a liability? Let's talk about the children. Children learn by imitation. If you marry a woman who is covered in ink, you are normalizing that behavior for your children. You are telling your daughter, this is what beauty looks like. This is what you should do to your body. Are you comfortable with your 16-year-old daughter coming home with a sleeve because mom has one? If the answer is no, then you're being a hypocrite by marrying the mother. Tattoos do not age well. Skin loses elasticity, ink bleeds. Colours fade to a murky green-blue. The sexy, edgy girl of 25 becomes the rough, worn-out woman of 50. Aesthetically, heavy ink accelerates the visual aging process. It creates visual noise that distracts from the face. But deeper than looks is the dignity factor. There is a quiet dignity in aging gracefully, in accepting the natural state of the body. There is a frantic desperation in trying to permanently alter the body to capture a specific vibe that belonged to a youth subculture. Sociologists have tracked tattoo usage for decades. While it has permeated the middle class, aggressive, heavy tattooing, neck, face, hands, remains a strong signal of lower socioeconomic status, or prole behavior. It signals a lack of long-term planning, low-time preference, and a rejection of elite norms. If you are trying to ascend, if you are trying to build generational wealth and move into higher circles, a partner who physically embodies the rejection of those circles will be an anchor around your neck. She will not fit in at the country club. She will not fit in at the charity gala. She will not fit in at the board dinner. And eventually she will resent you for taking her places where she feels judged. You can scream, "That's not fair," all you want. But you cannot scream the world into changing its subconscious biases. You have to play the game as it exists. Final thoughts. The vet mindset. I didn't make this video to tell you to hate women with tattoos. I didn't make this video to tell you that every girl with a butterfly on her ankle is a borderline sociopath. Exceptions exist. There is always the unicorn. I made this video to teach you risk management. Dating is an investment. Marriage is a merger. When you look at a potential partner, you are conducting due diligence. You are the CEO of your own life. We have looked at the data. We have looked at the psychology. 1. Sensation seeking, the need for constant dopamine. 2. Neuroticism, the ink as a coping mechanism for trauma. 3. Narcissism, the main character syndrome. 4. Rebellion, the hatred of authority and structure. 5. Sociosexuality, the link to high body counts and infidelity. 6. Financial illiteracy, high time preference spending. 7. Victimhood, branding the self with pain. 8. Biology, the toxic load on the system. 9. Legacy, the social cost. When you see a woman with significant aggressive ink, you're seeing a billboard that lists these risks. She's showing you who she is. Believe her. Can you have a fun fling with the tatted up alt girl? Absolutely. It'll probably be the wildest 3 months of your life. But should you give her the keys to your empire? Should you make her the mother of your sons? That is a gamble where the house usually wins, and in this casino, the price of losing is half your net worth and your peace of mind. Be smart. Think with the big head, not the little one. Look for the woman who doesn't need to paint over the masterpiece that nature created. Look for the woman who is comfortable in her own skin, literally. If you found value in this deep dive, do 2 things for me. Subscribe and hit the bell. We are building a brotherhood of men who see the world as it is, not as we wish it was. Comment below, what is your hard no when it comes to tattoos? Is it the neck, the hands, the lower back, or do you not care? I want to see where the line is drawn. Thanks for watching, stay sharp, stay dangerous, and read the warning labels.